The headache started 3 days before my 18th birthday, and I knew something was wrong when I woke up with blood under my fingernails and no memory of how it got there. Mum had been acting weird for weeks, watching me with this nervous energy, like she was waiting for something terrible to happen. Every time I caught her staring, she'd quickly look away and busy herself with laundry or dishes or whatever, but I could feel her eyes on me constantly. Dad had left when I was only 12. He'd just packed up and disappeared one night without explanation, and Mum never talked about him except to say he'd had problems that ran in his family. I'd always assumed he was an alcoholic or had gambling debts or something normal like that, but now I was starting to wonder if the problems were something else entirely. The night before my birthday, I was hanging out with Emma at the old quarry outside town, the place where everyone went to drink beer and make out, and pretend they were cooler than they actually were. Emma and I had been together for 6 months, and she was the first girl who'd ever looked at me like I was worth something, like I wasn't just another awkward kid counting down the days until graduation. We were sitting on the hood of my car, sharing a bottle of cheap wine she'd stolen from her parents' cabinet, talking about our plans for college and how we'd make long-distance work, even though we both knew we probably wouldn't. The moon was full and bright, casting everything in silver light, and Emma looked beautiful in that ethereal way that made my chest tight. That's when the first wave hit me. It was this overwhelming surge of heat that started in my stomach and spread through my whole body like some kind of liquid fire. "You okay?" Emma asked, noticing me grip the hood of the car so hard my knuckles went white. "You look like you're about to puke." I tried to tell her I was fine, but the words came out as a growl, low and animal-like. Emma laughed nervously, probably thinking I was joking around, but I could feel something changing inside me, something fundamental shifting, like tectonic plates. My vision started to blur around the edges, and suddenly I could smell everything, right from Emma's shampoo to the rust on my car, to a family of raccoons somewhere in the woods, to even the fear sweat starting to bead on Emma's skin as she realised something was actually wrong. My hands were changing too, fingers stretching longer, nails growing sharp and black, and when I looked down at my reflection in the car's paint, my eyes were golden and predatory. Nothing like the boring brown they'd been my whole life. I stumbled backward off the car, trying to put distance between Emma and whatever I was becoming, but she followed me, reaching out with concern written all over her face. "Jake, what's happening? You're really scaring me now." Her voice sounded different at this point, layered with harmonics I'd never noticed before, and underneath her perfume, I could somehow smell her pulse, rapid, frightened, and absolutely intoxicating. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to grab her, to sink these new teeth of mine into her throat, to taste the copper-sweet blood that was singing through her veins. However, the rational part of my mind, the part that was still human, was absolutely horrified by these thoughts. But that part was getting smaller by the second, drowning in waves of predatory hunger that felt older than civilization. "Stay back," I managed to say, though my voice was a lot deeper now, rougher, barely recognisable as my own. "Something's wrong with me. Something's really wrong, Emma." But she kept coming closer, her hand outstretched as if she was approaching a wounded animal, which I guess wasn't far off from the truth. The moonlight seemed brighter now, almost painful, and I could feel my bones stretching and reshaping themselves in ways that should have been agony, but instead felt like finally coming home. My clothes were getting tight, seams straining as my body expanded and changed, and when I caught another glimpse of my reflection in the car window, the thing staring back at me was barely human anymore. That's when the memories started flooding back. These were not my memories, but older ones, ancestral knowledge passed down through blood and bone. I saw my father, at 18, transforming under a full moon just like this one, saw his father before him, and his father before that, an unbroken line of monsters stretching back centuries. I understood now. why Dad had left me, why he'd disappeared without explanation on my 12th birthday. He'd known what was coming, he'd known what I would become, and he'd run rather than risk hurting Mum or me. The curse wasn't random, it was genetic, dormant, until the 18th birthday, when it activated like some kind of supernatural time bomb, turning ordinary boys into creatures of fang and claw and bottomless hunger. Emma was right in front of me now, her eyes wide with terror, but still trying to help, still believing that the boy she cared about was somewhere inside this thing I was becoming. "Jake, please, talk to me. We can figure this out. Just tell me what to do." Her hand touched my face, and the contact sent shockwaves through my nervous system. Every fibre of my being wanted to tear her apart, to feed on her fear and pain and life force, but somewhere deep inside, the human part of me was screaming in protest. This was Emma, who'd held my hand during scary movies and helped me study for chemistry tests and told me she loved me just last week. This was the girl who'd made me believe I could be better than the broken home I came from, better than the depression and anxiety that had followed me like shadows since middle school. The war between monster and man raged in my skull as Emma's fingers traced the sharp angles of my transformed face. I could feel myself leaning into her touch, drawn by instincts I couldn't control, and I knew with crystal clarity that in another few seconds there wouldn't be enough of Jake left to stop what was about to happen. So I did the only thing I could do. I ran. I turned and bolted into the woods, crashing through underbrush and over fallen logs, putting as much distance as possible between myself and the girl I loved before the last shreds of my humanity disappeared entirely. I spent the rest of the night deep in the forest, riding out the transformation in a feverish haze of pain and hunger and bone-deep loneliness. When dawn came, I was human again, naked and shivering, and covered in scratches from my midnight flight through the trees. I walked home in my human skin, past Mom, who was waiting on the porch with tears in her eyes, and a suitcase already packed. She knew. She'd always known this day would come. Emma texted me dozens of times that day, each message more worried than the last. I never answered. How do you explain to someone that you're a monster now? That loving you could literally get them killed? How do you tell them that the boy they fell for was just a temporary phase, and now there's something ancient and hungry wearing his face? I left town that afternoon, just like my father had, because some curses are too dangerous to fight, and some kinds of love are too precious to destroy. But unlike him, I wrote Emma a letter, explaining as much as I could without sounding completely insane. I told her she deserved better than someone who might wake up one morning with blood under his fingernails and no memory of where it came from. Sometimes I wonder if she understood. Sometimes I hope she didn't. You know how Valentine's Day makes you do stupid things? Like spend your last $50 on gas station roses and drive 2 hours to some state park you found on Instagram because your girlfriend saw a photo of heart-shaped trees or some Pinterest nonsense like that. That's exactly what I was doing on February 14th, cruising down Route 9 with Maya in my passenger seat, her hand on my thigh, both of us pretending this romantic gesture wasn't completely broke college student desperate. She'd been talking about this place for weeks, Lover's Glen State Park, where supposedly the trees grew in natural heart formations, and couples came to get engaged under some magical canopy of branches. Real fairy tale stuff that made me want to puke, but Maya's eyes lit up when she talked about it. So here we were, driving into the middle of nowhere with a cooler full of cheap wine and sandwiches from the deli counter at Food Lion. The park was smaller than I expected, just a gravel parking lot and a weathered wooden sign that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 70s. Maya was practically bouncing in her seat as we pulled up, already taking selfies before I'd even turned off the engine. "This is going to be so perfect," she kept saying, adjusting her makeup in the visor mirror. Jenny's never going to believe we actually came here. That should have been my first red flag. The fact that there were only 2 other cars in the lot on Valentine's Day, when this place was supposed to be some kind of romantic mecca. But Maya was already out of the car, grabbing the picnic basket we'd packed, her red dress fluttering in the cold February wind like she was auditioning for some horror movie and didn't know it yet. The trail was easy enough to follow, marked with those little wooden posts with arrows carved into them, leading deeper into a forest that felt wrong somehow. Too quiet, too still, even the wind seemed muffled, like someone had thrown a blanket over the whole world. Maya was chattering about her roommate's boyfriend, and some drama I wasn't really listening to, but her voice sounded different here, smaller, like the trees were swallowing up her words before they could properly form. About a quarter mile in, we found the first heart-shaped tree formation, 2 oaks that had grown together at the base, their trunks spreading apart, and then meeting again, about 10 feet up, creating this perfect Valentine silhouette against the grey sky. Maya went crazy for it, making me take about 30 photos of her posing underneath, and I'll admit it was pretty cool, even if the whole thing felt a little too perfect, too intentional, like someone had been training these trees for decades just for this moment. We kept walking deeper into the park, past more heart formations that got progressively weirder. Trees twisted into shapes that hurt to look at, branches that seemed to reach for each other with an almost desperate hunger. Maya didn't seem to notice anything strange. She was too busy planning our picnic and talking about how romantic this was, how she couldn't wait to post everything on social media. But I was starting to feel like we were being watched, and not just by squirrels or whatever. Every time I turned around, I could swear I saw movement in my peripheral vision, shadows that didn't match the trees, shapes that disappeared the moment I tried to focus on them. The temperature kept dropping too, our breath coming out in little puffs even though the weather app had said it would be in the 50s today. My phone showed no signal bars, which wasn't surprising this far out, but it made me feel cut off from the world in a way that made my skin crawl. That's when we found the clearing. It was perfect, almost aggressively perfect, a circular open space surrounded by those heart-shaped tree formations, with soft moss covering the ground like nature's own carpet. Maya gasped and clapped her hands together like a little kid, seeing Disney World for the first time. "This is it," she said, already spreading out our blanket. "This is exactly what I saw in the photos." But here's the thing. The photos she'd shown me were taken in summer, with green leaves and flowers, and bright sunlight streaming through the canopy. This place was bare and grey, and felt like a mouth waiting to swallow us whole. I wanted to suggest we find somewhere else, maybe head back toward the parking lot, but Maya was already unpacking our lunch, humming some song under her breath, and she looked so happy that I didn't have the heart to ruin it for her. We ate our sandwiches and drank wine from plastic cups, and for a while, it actually felt normal, romantic even. Maya was telling me about her plans for next semester, how she wanted to study abroad in Italy, and I was half listening and half watching the tree line for whatever was making that soft rustling sound that seemed to follow us everywhere. That's when I saw him. Another me, standing just behind one of the heart formations, wearing the exact same clothes I had on, down to the stupid Valentine's Day tie Maya had bought me at Target. He was perfectly still, like a statue, but his eyes were locked on Maya with this intense, hungry expression that made my stomach turn. I blinked hard, sure I was seeing things, maybe having some kind of stress hallucination from too much caffeine and too little sleep. But when I looked again, he was still there, and now he was smiling at Maya with my face, my smile, except it was wrong somehow. Too wide and too knowing. "Maya," I said quietly, not wanting to alarm her, but needing her to see what I was seeing. "Look behind you, slowly." But when she turned around, the other me was gone, vanished like he'd never been there at all. Maya frowned and looked back at me with concern. "Are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." I forced a laugh and told her I was fine. Just thought I saw a deer or something, but my hands were shaking as I poured myself more wine. The thing was, I knew I hadn't imagined it. I knew what I'd seen, and I knew it wasn't natural, wasn't right, wasn't anything that should exist in the real world. But Maya was already cuddling up next to me, her head on my shoulder, talking about how perfect this day was turning out to be, and I didn't want to ruin it by sounding like a crazy person. The sun was starting to set, painting the clearing in shades of red and orange that should have been beautiful, but instead made everything look like it was covered in blood. Maya suggested we take some sunset photos, and I was setting up her phone on a log when I heard my own voice say, "Hey, beautiful, come here for a second." I turned around, and there he was again, the other me, standing about 20 feet away with his arms open, beckoning to Maya with that same wrong smile. Maya's face lit up, and she started walking toward him, and I realised with growing horror that she couldn't tell the difference. To her, we looked exactly the same, sounded exactly the same, and why wouldn't we? We were exactly the same, except this thing wearing my face had eyes like black holes and a smell like rotting flowers that made my nose burn. "Maya, stop!" I called out, but she was already reaching for the thing's outstretched hands. "That's not me. Look at me, Maya. I'm right here." She turned back toward me with confusion, looking between me and the creature, and for a moment I thought she understood. But then the thing spoke again in my voice, perfect and familiar and completely wrong. "Don't listen to him, baby. He's not feeling well. Come with me, and I'll take care of you." Maya's confusion melted into concern, and she took another step toward the creature. "Are you okay?" she asked me, the real me, but she was still moving toward the fake one, drawn like a moth to flame. I lunged forward, desperate to grab her, to pull her away from that thing, but it was too late. The moment Maya's fingers touched the creature's hands, its mouth opened wider than any human mouth should open, revealing rows of teeth like broken glass, and Maya's scream cut through the evening air like a knife through silk before cutting off abruptly into a wet, choking sound that will haunt me until the day I die. I ran. I ran through the woods like something was chasing me, which maybe it was, branches tearing at my clothes and roots trying to trip me with every step. Behind me, I could hear Maya's voice calling my name, but it was wrong, distorted, like a recording played backward. I didn't stop running until I reached my car, and even then my hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the key in the ignition. I drove straight to the police station in town and told them my girlfriend had gotten lost in the park, that we'd gotten separated somehow, and I couldn't find her. They organised a search party that found her red dress hanging from one of those heart-shaped tree formations, torn to shreds but with no sign of blood, no sign of struggle, no sign of Maya at all. The official report said she'd probably fallen into one of the ravines and her body had been carried away by the current, but I know better. I know what I saw in those woods, and I know it's still out there, wearing faces it shouldn't wear, speaking with voices it shouldn't have, waiting for the next couple stupid enough to think love can conquer all. Sometimes I still get texts from Maya's number, just heart emojis, and messages saying, "I love you," but I know it's not her. It's never going to be her again.